don't know what else they have to do. You mentioned them playing in the national championship game in the 2017 season. They didn't just play in it. They lost in overtime on a Tua to Devontae Smith walk-off against Alabama. Alabama won in the COVID year, but Stephen A., you talked about how this is, beatdowns like this don't happen to good teams. Yes, they do. Remember 4 years ago, do you remember Clemson beating Alabama by 28 points? That's Nick Saban here. And no one is trying to run Nick Saban off. He's a phenomenal coach. He's the GOAT. He's the best of all time. But he's the number 2 coach in the country right now behind Kirby Smart. And that is inescapable in my mind. And I watch this every day, guys. And I don't know really what you're waiting for. Nick Saban has won 1 national championship in the past 5 years. That's not really a dynasty. He had a dynastic run when he won 6 since he was hired, 6 since 2009. But right now, the program has stepped back. It hasn't stepped back much. Stephen A., I agree with your premise that maybe they deserve to be in, maybe they didn't. They're one of the top 3 teams in the country right now. But they lost to LSU. They talked themselves out of going as opposed to earning their way in.
The blasphemy that's coming out of your mouth right there. The blasphemy. You and that damn David Pollack, who I love, but how dare just have Nick Saban sit right next to you and to say something like that. I didn't know what to do with myself, but then I caught myself because this is a 3-time All-American at Georgia. So I understand and I love my man Pollack, but I was like, oh my Lord, the blasphemy. I can't believe the words coming out of his mouth. And you, the mouth of the South, I would remind you that Nick Saban has won 3 national titles in the last 8 years. I would remind you that in 2020 they just won a national title. Now I understand that Georgia is the king of the crop right now. They're the 2-time defending national champions. I would remind you in the SEC championship game last year, Nick Saban took them out. Mechie goes down, okay? And then in the national championship game, Williams goes down. They were winning at the time this kind of stuff happened. You just ignore all of that stuff, okay? So I got it. They went and they stomped TCU. Alabama would have did the same thing. I'm just saying, when I look at let me look at the National Football League for a second. When I think about Patrick Mahomes, we used to talk about Aaron Rodgers. I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers that we just saw. All right, God bless him. I'm talking about the greatness of Aaron Rodgers. We saw that over a sustained period of time. And we said no matter what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes, let's see it over a sustained period of time. Georgia's the reigning 2-time defending national champions. Major props to them. Kirby Smart, exceptional coach, big-time program. I got all of that. But are you going to do this over a sustained period of time? I think Alabama's going to have something to say about that.
Yeah, I would say Georgia, Stephen A., I would say Georgia is probably going to do it over a sustained period of time.
He's been doing it.
He's been doing it since he took over the program. They've been in the mix. Every year they've been in the mix. I just don't think when you look at where they're at right now and where Alabama is, we're making it sound like Alabama, at least you are, Paul, making it sound like Alabama went from one. Yeah, you are. You making it sound like they went from 1 to 19. That's how you make it sound.
No, I didn't.
And that's
like
not
they ain't even in Georgia's level.
I'm telling you, that's how you making it sound, though. My ears is telling me you make it sound like that program is dead. That's the way you make it sound.
That's absurd. I mean, that is patently absurd. I'm not saying anything of the sort. I'm just simply I'm living in the real world, and you guys want to talk about Nick Saban. How has he done without Kirby Smart as his defensive coordinator? Yeah, he beat Kirby Smart, and then he won a title in COVID. But the program has slipped. We're not talking about falling off the face of the earth. We're talking about a fraction. And right now, a fraction means everything in college football. We just got through watching a 58-point win by Georgia. And by the way, it would have been 59, but the Georgia kicker missed the extra point at the end. That's how crazy this game was. I realize most of you have fallen asleep by this point.
Yes.
But in no way am I writing Nick Saban off. I'm just simply saying we are seeing a changing of the guard, and that matters. The fact that we're even talking about somebody possibly being better today than Nick Saban is a major paradigm shift. He owns the sport, Keyshawn. You know that. He doesn't own it anymore.
What would stop the changing of the guard then? What would stop, Paul, the changing of the guard? Does Alabama need to win a national championship next year? Do they need to beat Georgia in the SEC championship?
I would say it's a good idea if you want to stop this. I mean, right now, Georgia will start next season #1. They'll be a heavy favorite. That's what we used to say about Alabama every single year.
Okay, that's fine.
And one more thing, guys. I mean, you guys know this better than I do.
Okay.
But, Stephen A., the last 4 Alabama quarterbacks, you know who they are? They're Jalen Hurts, Tua, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young, who just won the Heisman and may be the first player chosen. We have no idea who the quarterback's going to be next year.
Okay, that's fine. You know what? I didn't have an idea who the hell Bryce Young was, but I know who he is now. I didn't have an idea who Mac Jones was, but I know who he is now. I didn't have a snowball chance in hell of knowing who the hell Tua Tagovailoa was, but he was pulled off the bench and won a national championship, all right, after they were wet in the bed in the first half against Georgia, by the way. Let me tell you something, all right? Nick Saban, do not underestimate Alabama. Don't underestimate that man. I understand Kirby Smart is the man right now. He's the reigning 2-time defending national champion. He deserves all the props in the world after putting in his 9 years under Nick Saban and learning from that level of greatness and having that sprinkled down upon him. He has capitalized off of it. He deserves the respect, but understand something. You still got to go up against Alabama. And next year, Alabama shall return. They should have been there this year.
Okay, wait, with that being said, Paul, let me get in here real quick. Paul, I want to ask you this, and then T, you can piggyback. Do you see Georgia three-peating?
No.
I didn't ask you.
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. And Stephen A. to play Georgia this year, Alabama, all they had to do was win their own division. You're talking about a team that could not win its own division against a program like LSU, who fired a coach last year. Listen, I realize that debate is over, but Molly, back to your question. I think Georgia is going to win, is going to be the favorite, and I think they'll win. And maybe a year from today, if we're also fortunate to still be sitting here, and Stephen A. will still be arguing that Nick Saban's the GOAT. I mean, Stephen A., I'm sorry.
He is.
I mean,